The Summer That Dried My Tears, Chapter 1. Whoosh! A cool gust of wind blew in through the open city bus window as I watched a gaudy, bright yellow car fly past. I peered out the window and up at the sky, which was a dismal gray with a smattering of ominous clouds. The bus made a few more stops until it came to a sad-looking, beat-up green bench, which was still 4 blocks from the apartment I shared with my father. The bus's worn brakes slowed it to a halt, and I lugged my backpack and purse off the bus, dumping them onto the green bench. I watched fondly as the bus sped away. Next stop, my apartment. Groaning a little as I snatched up my bags, I began my journey home. Reading is my one joy in this world, my only escape, and my poor, distressed backpack revealed years of being stuffed with books. I grabbed my purse as well, which had its own lot of sugar packets from the pizza place I worked at for my cheap dad to put in his coffee. There are days when my walk is worth it, considering I get to pass through a park with a gorgeous water fountain in the center, along with numerous flowering bushes. I have always enjoyed the peace and serenity of the place. This day, however, I was not lucky enough to be able to spend much time in the park. I had to get home to talk to my dad. The annual Teens Night Out was coming up in just a few days at our local bar and ballroom, and I was praying he would let me go. It would be the perfect start to the summer after just finishing high school, and although Bill, my father, has never let me go before, I had hope now that I was 18 years old. Finally, I reached our building and pushed through the double glass doors. Connected to the lobby is a little coffee shop where my best friend Henna worked. I walked up to a counter with a service window and saw her in the shop. I gave her a smile. She returned the gesture with a wink. Henna handed me a small cup of decaf hazelnut, the color of Henna's hair, sweetened just the way I like it, and I handed her a few dollars and said thanks. As I turned to head to the elevator, she leaned out and tapped my shoulder, and in a hushed voice she asked, "Hey Danny, are you going to TNO? 'Cause everyone we know is going to be there. It'd be a shame if you missed it, again." Henna rolled her eyes. "Henna, you know how Bill is." I glanced down at my worn-out sneakers. "He doesn't trust me, not to mention the boys that will be there. He barely lets me out of the house, other than school and work, and I think I'm lucky I even get that." "I know, but I hope you can convince him." She gave me a pleading yet sympathetic look. "Besides, if you talk to him now, he'll be sober. It's still pretty early in the evening." She seemed hopeful. "Yeah, sure. I gotta go before he gets pissed at me for being late." I glanced back up at her. "See you later," I mumbled, trying to put a convincing smile on my face. I walked over to the elevator and pushed the button. The doors creaked open and I stepped in. I used the ride up to the 4th floor to gather my thoughts. How I dreaded having to bring this up to my dad. Maybe dread wasn't the right word. More like I was terrified to bring it up to my dad. The elevator jerked to a stop and let me out. I sauntered down the hall. How would I even start this conversation? My dad wasn't exactly normal. When my mother was still alive, they would fight all the time, sometimes with more than just words. The police were called on him more than once. He's a dangerous man with a short temper. Dealing with him is a fine art, like dodging bullets or walking on a minefield, made especially difficult if he is drunk, which is typical any time after 4 o'clock. My throat clenched, and I could feel the sweat on my neck as I reached out for the door handle. I closed my eyes and took a breath, then pushed the door open. Bill was sitting in his recliner smoking a cigarette. I chose my words carefully. "Hey, Dad," I said tentatively. "I was just talking to Henna and—" I couldn't get the question out. "I got a coffee. Would you like a sip?" I sputtered out. "No," he replied coldly. He didn't even bother to look back at me. "There are dishes to be done, so don't just stand around," he announced harshly, and I got the feeling that he intended I do them now. Letting out a breath, I took off my shoes and walked into the kitchen. The cool tiles felt nice on my hot feet. Dumping my stuff on the small kitchen table, I glanced at the pile of dishes. Sipping on my coffee, I walked over to stand on the soft kitchen mat by the sink and turned on the water. Setting the coffee down on the counter, I grabbed the lavender-scented dish soap. It smelled lovely as I poured some into the basin. The sound of the water relaxed my tense mood a bit. Bill continued to watch some kind of college sports. I started with the glasses. The action and warm water were soothing. I was so entranced with the dishes after a while that I jumped a little when my father spoke, and I almost dropped his favorite beer glass. Danny, I've seen posters up for that teen party thing coming up, he said coolly. You remember my rules? Well, actually, I wanted to speak with you about that, I answered. You're not going. It's at a bar, and there will be boys. I know boys and what they think, and they don't need to be thinking about my girl that way. I won't have it, he said firmly. I looked down at the dishwater and decided I'd try and push my luck tonight. He has never let me do anything. Maybe just this once he'd bend. I gathered my voice. Dad, I could go with Henna. She's been my friend for years and wouldn't let anything happen to me. I'll steer clear of the guys, trust me. I just want to go have fun with my friends. If you want, I'd even check in with you on my phone. Just please, I really... He cut me off. No, you won't be attending. Don't try to push the issue. I had been staring down into the dishes so hard I hadn't heard him come up behind me. When he grabbed my shoulder, shock pulsed through me. I let out a yelp. Knowing it would only make things worse, I didn't try to struggle away from him. He grabbed both of my hands, one of which held a small paring knife. He squeezed them tightly, and I could feel the blade pierce into my palm. I stifled another cry as silent tears streaked down my face. I gritted my teeth. He must have finally realized what he was doing and let my hands go, shoving me away from him. I slammed against the edge of the sink and held onto it, shaking, while he stalked back into the living room, grumbling. I listened for the sound of him dropping back into his chair as if nothing had happened. My hand was throbbing as I looked down at it. I watched as the brilliant red blood oozed out of the gash on my palm. Gritting my teeth, I turned on the water and felt the sting as I let it wash some of the blood away. I grabbed the dish towel and applied it to my palm as I headed for my bathroom. I went into the tiny room, turning on the lights with my nose. I shut the door with my elbow. Hunching over the small pedestal sink, I nudged down the cold water and stuck my palm into the stream. I watched as the water was stained with my blood. I looked up at the mirrored medicine cabinet, careful not to make eye contact with the black-haired, fair-skinned girl in the mirror. I didn't want to see her like this. Yanking the door of the cabinet open, I searched for the medical kit. Finding it, I picked out a wad of gauze and some thick, sticky medical tape. Shutting off the water, I patted the cut dry with the stained dish towel and quickly applied the medical gauze and snugly secured it with the tape. I shut the cabinet door and looked into the mirror. This time I made eye contact with her and watched as her hazel eyes filled with tears. The person looking back at me held a gut-wrenchingly pained expression. Looking away from her, I backed up and sat down on the edge of the porcelain bathtub, pondering how many more times I would have to dress a wound or put makeup on a black eye. I looked down at my bandage, deciding I would have Henna look at the cut tomorrow. Her father was a doctor, and she had learned a lot from him over the years. She was planning on studying to become a nurse. Wiping my tears with the back of my hand, I strode out into the hall, directly into my tiny bedroom, and shut the door. Not bothering to turn on the lights, I sat down on my bed. I stared at the barely visible blue walls and made a silent vow to myself that I would not let this happen to me again. Somehow.